Ladies and gentlemen, it's here. It's finally here. 5.2 is upon us. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's get started with the star of the hour. As his records reveal, Wernern ventured into the Philippine jungle when he was young with his father, Chronic. There, Wernern was shown the dark secret of his family. These secrets are revealed to Dee, Kitten, and Amanda by a complete accident that shows them where Wernon's cache of records was hidden. An accident Dee assigns to Wernon's ghost helping them. But is this true? Was it Fagu's ghost that pointed them to his stash? Ghosts are a part of the world of darkness, known as wraiths. In fact, they have their own game line, Wraith the Oblivion, where you can play as one. We'll be covering them in depth in the future, but for now let's tackle the question, could Wernon's wraith have guided the group to his cache? Yes. Wraiths can form quite quickly after death, though it typically takes more time, and knocking a bucket's contents over in a particular shape isn't far-fetched for a ghost to do. But does that mean it was Wernern? The worm, the great corruptor that the Gro war against, has countless baleful spirits at its disposal. And, as we'll cover later, the worm's servants seem to have a vested interest in getting Dee's family to follow their lead against the Gro. So, was it Wernern that knocked over the bucket, or was it a worm spirit? We don't know for sure. It could have been Fagu as a ghost, but this would require him getting his bearings and forming quite quickly. Not impossible, just not common. And there's another party that benefits a great deal from Dee and his family taking the path they have. We also see him use the Oculus, but it looks just like the time Marcus used it, and until we learn more about the artifact, this doesn't reveal much. Occam already told us Fagu had used it before. The rest of the story is more reflected by Wernon's companions through the expedition. Let's talk about Chronic. A cruel, bigoted imperialist, set on conquest and destruction. He brings his entourage to the Philippines in the hunt for Gro. He deceives Wernern into believing the Gro are attacking people, stealing babies and the like. This is a lie. It is Chronic who did these horrible things, including murdering the local tribespeople, all so that he can induct Wernern as a stolen moon. What is a stolen moon? Every Gro is a werewolf, but not every werewolf is a Gro. Some that can take a wolf form obtain the power through more despicable means. Stolen moons are humans that have stolen the means of taking a werewolf's war form. There are two basic means of doing this: bargains with umbral spirits, and horrible rituals that involve skinning and wearing the hide of a Gro. While this will allow a man to take a war form, it is noticeably lacking in some ways. The transformation is typically not complete, such as with Chronic lacking a wolf's claws and still having human hands. They typically cannot assume any animalist form but the Krynos, the war form. The patron spirits that grant Gro their more magical powers typically do not extend such boons to stolen moons. Hell, when men like Chronic take their wolf form by skinning rites, they may not be aware of the Umbra or its spirits at all. To the Gro, obviously, wearers of wolf face are typically killed on sight, especially the skinning rites kind. Those of the made a pact with umbral spirits variety may, depending on the circumstances, be forgiven for their transgression, even cooperated with against greater foes. That's Chronic and Stolen Moons. Let's talk about Wida and the Nails of Christ. The Nails are a hunter organization based out of the Philippines, originating from Philippine resistance to colonialism. In 1892, the Katipunan was founded as an organization dedicated to independence from the Spanish Empire via violent revolution. The actual real-world history of the movement and its actions is fascinating, but that's fit for a different video. In World of Darkness, a sliver of the Katipunan came to believe a conspiracy that colonial forces were trafficking supernatural monsters into the Philippines to harass and kill the local population. And they were right. This sliver came to become the Nails of Christ, a proper hunter organization fueled by the doctrine of Filipino Catholicism. In more modern years, the Nails have become quite insular and xenophobic, understandable given their history. But at the time of the Fagu Expedition, they are more accepting of those with a kind heart. The thing that stands out the most to me is how much Wida resembles Dee. They're both parents looking to save their kidnapped child from a werewolf. They're both very dogmatic, but it stems from an understandable history of horrors suffered by the supernatural, and both are quite manipulative. We'll get to Dee's side of it shortly, but Wida's quite sly here. Her very careful choice of words is clearly meant to steer Wernern towards joining the Nails. Now, the word manipulate has some pretty negative connotations, but that's not what I mean here. I don't think she's in the wrong to recruit Wernern. She never actually blames him for what his ancestors did, or even what his father did. But his father only came here to induct him as a stolen moon. His life is built on the wealth and prestige his family accumulated by destroying the lives of others. He came to the Philippines to plunder it of cultural artifacts, something he explicitly says. Even if stopping the werewolf attacks is his stated primary objective, he still came to do harm. Misguided, ignorant harm, not the evil of his father, but harm nonetheless. I don't see this final scene with Wida as her blaming Wernern for what his father did. But the harm his family did is still real. The bathroom tiles are still dirty. They may not be Wernern's, but they still have to be cleaned. And I see this as Wida offering him the chance to do good for the world, even if it's not his fault it's dirty in the first place. However, Wernern did have tiles of his own to clean. He spent 50 years stealing from the Arcanum, and there's a lot to unpack there. First, it's noted that even a beloved patriarch like Fagu made enemies, as any hunter would over their career, no matter how kind-hearted. Could his theft have led to these enemies? Maybe. There's nothing to suggest such, but I find it difficult that a full human lifetime of cross-global betrayal wouldn't be sniffed out by someone along the way. However, there's nothing in the show currently saying that Wernern's theft is what got him killed, or what earned him enemies. It's just something I find quite likely. Significantly more of note, Wernern lists data in the things he stole. Did he steal the hunter data? Was that floppy disk just blank this whole time? I don't know. Wernern seems to have been ahead of the curve on the Coalition. He fully predicted their illicit ties and how they would be detrimental to the Arcanum. He may have undercut their efforts, absconding with the hunter data and leaving a decoy in its place. It tracks with what I laid down in the Ghoul video, that it seems like only Arcanum leadership could access the globe without breaking it. But again, there's nothing in the text saying it definitively. Both of these points are, as yet, only theories to keep in mind. World of Darkness is a cruel, cold place. There are so many evils, so many monsters patrolling the shadows. And something I really appreciate about Hunter the Parenting is that even if we only knew him briefly, there was this light of a kind-hearted, good man helping to make it better. I worry for the Captain General. His anger, his raw panic over Marcus, it's concerning. Especially when he says he'd be willing to ally with the likes of Chronic to get back his fiancée. It's understandable, but a dangerous path that I'm surprised Dee doesn't do more to smother. It's the exact same rationale he worries about finding in Marcus, so finding it here and encouraging it is confusing to say the least. As far as lore revelations go, there's only one thing of note. Kitten is surprised to find out werecats exist. This is concerning for my theory that he's secretly a Bastet. It's not impossible. Bastets and werecats are different things. But Bastets are typically exceptional lore keepers, passing down stories of other therianthropes to their children. If he were a Bastet, he would likely already know this. The only flicker of hope for my theory is that in his depressive spiral, he hints at having lost his family while quite young. If he is a Bastet, this would explain why he doesn't know more about the supernatural. Speaking of which, a lot of people consider the Bastet theory closed due to Kitten supposedly suffering from delirium. So evidence he's not a Bastet, right? Let's cover the facts. Number 1. Seeing a Garou triggers delirium, a brain-scrambling fear response in non-supernaturals. Number 2. Standing alongside comrades can mitigate the delirium, as Kitten did with Occam, Waters, and Amanda. However, this may not mitigate the long-term effects of delirium, only the initial shock. Number 3. In 5.2, Kitten complains of his mind getting foggy, and Dee ascribes this to the long-term effects of delirium. These are the facts as we know them. And I propose the solution is that Dee is just straight up wrong here. Possibly. Dee himself says his knowledge of Garou is limited, and Kitten just suffered an incredibly traumatic event between the general stress of the night, seeing a Garou for assumedly the first time, and watching Marcus get kidnapped. We see this with his angry, frantic behavior at the beginning of the episode. This is just as likely to be a normal stress response. I don't think Dee, by his own admission, is qualified enough to tell the difference between that and delirium. In addition, Bastet are strange in that they can both cause and suffer from the delirium, so whether or not Kitten can fall under its effects doesn't sway it one way or the other. In the end, we still don't have definitive 100% evidence one way or the other as to whether or not Kitten is or isn't a Bastet. But the theory isn't dead in the ground like some people believe. Dee also has little in the way of new lore, but there are some things to touch upon. One thing that sticks out to me, these scars on his chest from Matilda's claws. It's not surprising that he be marked up, a fucking Garou took a swipe at him. But what is surprising is that his neck is fully healed. It seems as if it healed almost immediately after his first clash with Matilda, but these slashes to his chest are still visibly scarred over. We now have something of a range for Dee's healing factor, measuring the lowest damage he can heal from and the highest he can't. We also know quite surely that it is a supernatural healing factor. A normal person cannot get their chest slashed open with 3 individual foot-long gashes and just walk that off with no medical attention. Dee is 100% something more than a mundane human. I can say that with full confidence. We see some of Dee's patented manipulation as well this chapter. I think there's 2 ways you can interpret Dee's face as Amanda and Kitten get hit with Worm's spiral depression. 1, he's also being assailed by the worm and he's fighting to resist it himself. And 2, he's allowing Kitten and Amanda to dip into worm depression so that he can be the one to pull them out, and this is him fighting the urge to save them too early. I personally lean towards the former. Dee pretty clearly has high true faith, given the events of Chapter 5, but even that's not enough to be immune to worm corruption entirely. In game terms, he passed his save, and gave the other 2 hunters advantage on their rolls. And he's definitely using this moment to inoculate the 2 against the horrors, then give them hope of defeating it with the werewolf defeated record. That's pretty manipulative, but for their own good, just like Wida with Wernern. But I don't think Dee exposed them to the worm on purpose. I don't think Dee is even fully aware of what the worm is, or even that it was assaulting them at this time. But I do think he took advantage of the moment to make this play and to make them stronger hunters for it. The biggest thing with Dee here is his willingness to work with the Coalition. This ties back into the question still hanging over Occam's relationship with them. Apparently, the Coalition is such a threat that Dee hates them, but is willing to work alongside them if he thinks it will save Marcus. But will it? Matilda traveled the Umbra to escape, her destination totally unknown. There's a strong possibility her pack is operating out of the fort based on Fagu's notes. But that's no guarantee. And even then, a team of 4 people with automatic weapons, a master hunter with a cursed ? Sword, and a war crime bullet couldn't even put a significant dent in her health bar. World of Darkness isn't the kind of setting where raw muscle can save the day, and I doubt the Coalition is willing to offer much else. Despite not being present, Matilda gets a great deal of coverage in 5.2. The biggest thing being the revelation of her tribe, the Red Talons. That's fucking crazy. I covered before how the Garou are typically quite misanthropic, avoiding humanity if possible. The Red Talons are a tribe that takes this to the furthest extreme possible, considering humanity a scourge that should have been eradicated in the Impergium. It's even rare for a Red Talon to make use of modern technology. So for one to be chosen for an infiltration mission in human society is odd. This makes her accomplices in the infiltration all the more puzzling. First, this little bastard. Second, this big bastard. These are likely patron spirits. Spirits that grow and treat for more power. We can see this pretty directly at the end of chapter 5. Here we see Matilda pop off a claw-based power, some of which are given by bear spirit patrons. Given that the bear literally manifests behind her as she does it, I feel like that's pretty clear-cut. Spiders are also a form of available patron, and are favored by glasswalkers, Garou that actually like humanity and their inventions. Spider spirits typically give glasswalkers tech-based powers, like shutting down machines remotely. This means that this spider, and or the power it grants, are responsible for scrambling the security cameras. Amanda even makes the link between the spider and the Garou, having seen the glasswalker sigil in its webbing before. She just didn't know what she was looking at. But that raises a point. Matilda conjures the bear spirit to ask it for this claw power, but the spider not only climbs up onto her, it's also just been hanging out in the Arcanum. If Matilda were walking around scrambling computers every day, sure, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Anansi are were-spiders, named after the African trickster god of the same name. There's a lot to get into with Anansi, but the most pressing to our discussion here is that Anansi have access to the same gifts that glasswalkers receive from spider spirits for controlling machines. They also have a transformation that lets them turn into a swarm of normal-looking spiders that they each individually inhabit. So, all that brings us to this. Is this little guy a spirit Matilda invoked for glasswalker powers, or part of an Anansi she's collaborating with? We don't know yet. Coming back around to the bear spirit, it's weird that one would give gifts to a Red Talon. The bear spirit and its werebear supplicants are typically more chill and disapprove of their more destructive canine kin, especially the extra militant Red Talons. That the bear would give its gifts to a Talon is interesting, to say the least. So, to summarize just how weird the situation with Amanda is, we have a militant, kill humans on-site werewolf, working as a spy surrounded by humans, including a seasoned werewolf expert being assisted by both a bear spirit that typically doesn't approve of militant violence, and also either a spider spirit that is the exact opposite of a Red Talon in every way, or an Anansi that also infiltrated the Arcanum to assist. That's a motley crew that would almost never work together. And what the hell is so important about Black Shuck that would cause this to come to pass, I'm very keen on finding out. As always, the world of darkness takes more than it gives. We've learned a great deal in the past 2.5 hours with this episode. But for every question answered, 2 more take its place. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way.